All right, so this, of course, is the big story that we are tracking on Fine Print tonight. The Taliban's ban on university education for women is being met with resistance by the Afghan women. Countries around the world have also come forth and condemned Taliban's move. Afghans are out on the streets and they are protesting against this decision. Now, young Afghan women were seen demonstrating outside of the Kabul University, chants of either everyone or no one, and one for all filled the air. The students were despondent. Many spoke about their despair at the new rules. Some are still willing to in fact fight. They still hope that things could change even under the Taliban regime.
I heard this news today and I felt such terrible feelings. I tore up all my notebooks since this is not life to live for us, as the Taliban are not allowing us to continue our studies. I came to the university to enroll, but Taliban did not allow me in. I cannot express my feelings. No one can understand me.
We have an unknown future under this government. It's like all our hopes have been buried and there is no hope anymore. But I think if we struggle, inshallah, it may have some positive results.
When I got close to the university, I saw a strange environment. Taliban Humvees were parked at the entrance gate, and the Taliban were behaving so badly, telling us, return to your homes. Girls have no right to study anymore. This situation has a very bad impact on every female student.
Now, these young girl students have also received some amount of support from their professors. Several of them have resigned in solidarity from different universities across Afghanistan, from Kabul, Takhar and even in Kunduz. Now, Afghanistan's cricketers have also come forth and shown some spine. They're standing in solidarity with the women. Rashid Khan, the former captain of the national team, has tweeted this post with the hashtag Let Afghan Girls Learn. Now, the international community has condemned the Taliban's ban. Condemnation has flown in from the Muslim world as well. Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates and Turkey have all slammed the Taliban for their move. Qatar has expressed deep concerns. The United States has in fact asked the Taliban to reverse the order. Under pressure, the Taliban has tried to justify this ban. The acting education minister has released a statement saying, and I quote here, "We told the girls to wear a proper hijab, but they did not. They wore dresses like they were going to a wedding ceremony. Some of them were studying agriculture and engineering, and this did not match with the Afghan culture." This is the education minister there. Now, what is interesting is that the education minister is now asking the world not to interfere in what he describes as internal matters of Afghanistan. But the pressure isn't just external. Reports say that there is a rift even within the Taliban over this diktat. Remember, Afghan's acting interior minister Sirajuddin Haqqani is reportedly in favor of allowing girls to get into schools and universities. He wants education for both men and women. And he's, of course, part of the Haqqani network, a pro-Pakistan faction of the Afghan establishment. The first deputy of the Prime Minister and also the Taliban co-founder, Abdul Ghani Baradar, has promised good action to educate girls in the country. And this is in direct contrast to what has taken place. The current leader of the Taliban is Habibatullah Akhundzada. Reports say that it is his faction that wanted a total ban on women's education. Because of the opposition, he has reportedly put the Kandahar city under martial law. He also allegedly fears a possible coup d'etat. The Taliban fighters are reportedly patrolling the streets of Kabul and Herat as well, and fears that differences could escalate further into a possible full-blown disagreement within the Taliban on the issue of women's education. All right, now to give us more perspective in terms of what is presently happening in Afghanistan and as to why the Afghan young women have in fact been abandoned in many ways by the international community, we are being joined by Ramita Nawai. She's joining us from London. She's a journalist, author and also a documentary maker who made the documentary No Country for Women. Now, Ms. Nawai, thank you very much indeed for taking time out and speaking to us here on WION. Now, the Taliban has been in power in Kabul since August 2021. They promised that they were going to be different this time round. But what is clear as daylight is that that was never their intention, and the ban on women's education, where girls are no longer being allowed into universities, is something that the world seems to have walked in blindly.
Yes, so if you remember, the Taliban's very first press conference just after they took power in August 2021, the Taliban spokesperson, Mujahid, promised the world that women would have rights within the framework of Islam, he said. But then he was very clear that women would be able to work and they would have a right to education. And that's when actually some of the world was watching and thinking maybe the Afghan Taliban, maybe the Taliban have reformed. And of course, as we've seen, they haven't reformed. Not only have they not reformed, they have reverted to type. And the type that they're reverted to is pretty horrific. What I saw when I was investigating.
Absolutely. Now, the question that I want to ask you, Ms. Nawai, is also the rift that is being talked about within the Taliban. There is a faction which reportedly is led by the Interior Minister Sirajuddin Haqqani, which says that women and girl students should be allowed into universities and both men and women should have equal access to education. But Habibatullah Akhundzada, the supreme leader of the Taliban, is the one who is said to be in favor of not having women attend universities. Do you think there really is a rift like this, or is this something that is being overstated in media reports?
I think there are reformist factions within the Taliban. I use the word reformist very loosely, but we saw that when we were there, this internal rift within the Taliban. I'll give you an example. So when Kabul issued an edict that commanders in the provinces should not be forcefully marrying young women and girls. However, commanders in the provinces were forcefully marrying young women and girls. What that shows you is that Kabul can issue all the edicts it likes, but it cannot control its commanders in the provinces. And this shows you two things. First of all, that there is a rift within the Taliban. So each province and each commander is following their own faction, but also that it's a very factious system, and it's not the same hierarchical structure as it was 20 years ago.
Now, a lot of people say that Taliban, in fact, enjoys a lot of popular support in the rural hinterland of Afghanistan. The question that I want to ask you is, a diktat such as this, which forbids young girls from accessing education right from the school level and the university level, how is this being witnessed by people within Afghanistan?
Well, I think people overstate the support that the Taliban has. I think the Taliban, of course, does have support, and there was a reason that they managed to sweep into power so quickly. Afghans were fed up with the corruption of the last government. However, that support now is really waning. That support, because of the economic situation and because of the violence that's being meted out to ordinary Afghans, is really waning. Something else I would say, especially if you talk about the provinces and rural areas, is that the last 20 years haven't been for nothing. So even though rural areas haven't changed that much in the last 20 years, it's mostly been big cities like Herat and Kabul and Mazar Sharif. What has happened in the rural areas is that there was hope. They would look to the big cities and be hopeful of change that could come. Now that hope is lost, and that hope is most brutally lost and most brutally felt in the provinces.
Absolutely, indeed. And my final question to you, Ms. Nawai, is, this war in Afghanistan, many say, is actually a war on women. This essentially is perhaps, it happens in no other country where young girls are not allowed to attend schools and universities because of a bizarre belief that the rulers have there. The question that I want to ask you is, how do you see things proceeding here? We've seen girls come out onto the streets and stage protests. Do you think there will be popular support for these young girls, for the common people of Afghanistan? Possibly a civil disobedience of sorts, where people come out and say that this kind of a diktat, which the Taliban has now imposed, is simply not acceptable. Do you think that's happening in Taliban?
Well, what we've seen is, I think, up to 50 university professors so far resigning from their posts. We've seen male students refusing to sit exams in protest. And as you say, we've seen a few dozen women protesting. However, I'm not that hopeful, and I'll tell you why. Because protesting as a woman, first of all, there have been arrests over the last year and a half. Many women who have protested have been arrested and imprisoned, and we mustn't forget the social stigma that comes with that. So I think it's incredibly brave of these women, but there's a real atmosphere of fear, and I think their lives are at risk. So I'm not certain that this will bubble over into anything. I hope it does, because as you say, this is a war against women.
Absolutely. Thank you very much indeed, Ms. Nawai, for joining us from London and getting us all those insights there. WION is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news on the move.